So, welcome to one of the first episodes of the Recruitment Smart podcast. I'm your host, Bill Boorman. I'm delighted to invite my guest, Yusuf. Yusuf, before we kick off, you are Recruitment Smart, so you are effectively the host of the show. You're a co-founder of Recruitment Smart. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's really nice talking to you today. So I'm Yusuf Jazakallah. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Recruitment Smart Technologies. We are a generative AI company headquartered in London, and we automate end-to-end talent acquisition processes for large organizations globally.
So that's pretty interesting, and I know you've been working on this for a number of years. I've been some work with you in terms of the product and other areas. What I'm really interested in understanding is the customers who are using AI. Let's forget about the Recruitment Smart bit for a minute and keep the podcast open. The customers who are using AI, what are the benefits they're deriving from actually doing that?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So AI has come a long way since it started, and the key benefits that customers they get are mostly in terms of productivity and efficiency improvements.
Can you give me
So
some kind of example when we
yeah,
talk about productivity? That's a logical one. Give me an example of a particular customer. You don't need to name that customer, but the kind of size of organisation and what productivity savings they're actually seeing having implemented AI.
so we have a number of customers who have been using the product since more than 3 years now, and before they deployed AI, uh, the typical benefits are twofold. So one is for high volume applications where they used to post a job online, and within 24 hours they used to get more than 1,000 applications. So in this kind of a use case, AI is very beneficial because it can very, very quickly sift through and screen all these applications in an automated fashion and rank the candidates in the order of suitability for the recruiter. And this is a win-win situation for both candidates as well as recruiters because from a candidate point of view, the best candidates always get a chance to be put in front of the recruiters very, very quickly and regardless of when they applied. And from a recruiter's point of view, they are working in a prioritized fashion with a curated list rather than working in a random order for the candidate.
So,
So for high volume applications, it's very, very beneficial. Yeah.
in simple terms, how does the ranking work?
So the AI effectively emulates recruiter behavior. So the AI will work to screen the applications based on criterias like skills, certifications, number of years of experience, all the typical attributes which recruiters typically look at while screening candidates. AI will look at a similar level of attributes, but it will do it a bit faster than a human, and it will standardize the screening. It will remove and or at least standardize or reduce the bias which is coming into play during the screening. So all of these benefits are coming because of automation, and it's basically emulates a recruiter in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, so removing the bias, how does that happen? What is it the AI is doing that the humans didn't?
That's a really good question. So, the human brain effectively has, limited processing power compared to a machine. So what we do is that we use a rule of thumb. We use heuristics to make snap decisions and quick judgment.
So
And because
heuristics,
of that,
what does that
yeah,
actually, just
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but
So,
heuristics, what's that
yeah,
for the
heuristics
TA leader
is
who doesn't understand?
basically when we summarize information and make a quick judgment on a few key pieces of information rather than doing a detailed analysis of each and every point that comes across us. But that's something that the human brain does, where it will use prior information and make associations without considering all of the data which is present in front of you. So this leads to kind of and then this is something that a human brain does implicitly for each and every piece of information that it comes to us. So based on your past experience, you might you might have a better experience with a certain type of candidate, or with a certain geography of a candidate, or a certain name of a candidate, or a photograph of a candidate. So all of these different attributes of candidates can introduce a bias in the recruitment process based on the prior experience of the recruiter. And this is something which is very natural for the human brain to do. Now, this is something that we can train the algorithms to kind of ignore and standardize, the recruitment process to focus on objective criteria like skills or experience or certifications and all of these other attributes, which are much more important. And research has shown that the more diverse the workforce, the better is the performance of the organization overall.
So
And it's
we're
not just about
effectively
one type of
creating
diversity.
rules,
Yeah,
is what you're talking about. We're creating a rule set which are consistently applied.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. You have hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, it really reminds me. I had a conversation. I ran a debate, I think, at HR Tech in Vegas a number of years ago, and I ran a debate which was between data scientists and recruiters, which was the beginning of AI, and it was data science versus machines v humans. Effectively, was the conversation. But the winning comment was from a data scientist, I think from Higher View at the time, who were probably the leaders in trying to crack this stuff in the early days. And he said to me something which has stuck with me, which is the human brain operates on algorithms. He said, we just don't think that. He said, the human brain operates on inputs, which is what your experience is, what your knowledge is, what your opinions are, in exactly the same way as an automated machine would when it's creating rules. The problem is people have bad and good days, whereas machines have consistent days. And that really sticks out to me. What are you seeing when you go in and implement? The thing our listeners are really interested in hearing about. A lot of people thinking about beginning this journey of AI. Some with trepidation, some with excitement, some really embracing it and going for it. What difference are you seeing to the actual recruiters or the people who operate? How is it changing workflow, and what difference is it making?
So yeah, that's a really good question, Bill. So I think most of the recruiters and all the human beings that we speak to, typically they like to do creative stuff. They like to kind of talk to the candidates. They like to do engagement and become a brand ambassador for the company, but they are not able to do that because of all the manual processes which come into the way. And they spend a lot of time doing manual activities rather than the things that they like to do. So it's basically the AI algorithms will automate some of the manual activities that they are supposed to do, and it allows them to focus on building a relationship with the candidate, which is what the recruiter's job is by definition. Is they are representing the company in front of the candidate and convincing them to join the organization. So when organizations are looking to implement AI, the biggest problem that most of the organizations face today is the quality of the data that they have. Now, if it's effectively garbage in, garbage out kind of a situation where a lot of the legacy systems which are being used by organizations, like be it various applicant tracking systems in the market, which have been there for 10, 15 years, they rely on the recruiters to input the right information of candidates. And most of the recruiters, they don't have the time to do that, or they might not be trained to do that. And because of that, the quality of data in these legacy systems is very, very poor. And what AI allows you to do is, if the information doesn't exist, the AI will actually create that information for you with a very high level of accuracy.
But how does it
So it is
create
all
that
about,
without
yeah,
something we hear about all the time, which is ghosting, which is kind of these false.
yeah. So, so basically, imagine that for AI to work properly, it needs to have a good job description. This is a very simple example.
Yeah.
However, most of the recruiters, they either work on poor job description templates because nobody has the time to actually sit down and create it properly. Um, in fact, almost all of the organizations that we work with currently have this fundamental problem of having good quality job descriptions and having the skills and all the other kind of attributes that they're looking for properly specified in the job description. This knowledge is not there many a times with the recruiters. This knowledge is there with the hiring managers who are not going to give this input either properly to the recruiters in time, or they just don't have the bandwidth to
Yeah,
do
all the
that. So
recruiters I know,
yeah,
certainly as a recruiter, I
yeah,
can identify that.
yeah,
I knew what I was looking for, so I very rarely put it on paper. I'd write a few lines
exactly.
to say I'm hiring for this, but
Exactly, exactly.
I'm the
So you
human
write a few
dealing with it.
lines and
So yeah.
exactly, exactly. So you write a few lines, but that is usually not enough for the AI to kind of to work on. So what the AI does is that based on the LLMs, and the things like ChatGPT, so you can custom train an AI specific for different domains and job descriptions, and it would automatically generate the job description based on a few lines that the recruiter may have written or based on a few skills that they might have heard from the hiring manager. And this, from what we have seen, this improves the accuracy of the whole process by up to 25%, which is a huge difference. This is a very simple use case of how AI can help improve the data quality.
So where
Similarly,
does this
like, yeah.
actual where does it? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I keep getting questions popping up in my head. Where does this core information come from to create this spec and make it accurate? Where do you get it from?
So again, that's a very good question. So this is created organically over a period of time. So there are lots of data sources that organizations have access to, but they are not being used currently. So let's say there's one data source where they have all the different jobs that they have hired in the past and candidates that have been kind of hired for those positions, right? So from that you can automatically have a correlation of what types of jobs have what type of candidates that were performing well in the organization and what type of skills that they had. So from here you will have the skills data at a high level, compared to the jobs. Similarly, you also have data on candidates who were selected, who were offered, who were rejected. So there's a huge amount of data which is already available, which can be used and fed into the AI to create a model, which can then be effectively used to figure out this map, so it's like a contextual map at a very high level, which has data on different jobs, on the skills which are required for the jobs, on the different affinities. Like okay, so if you have one particular skill, then you will have a different type of skill along with that as well. So, for example, if you are into sales and you have been a very successful person in the sales kind of career, then then automatically you will have good communication skills. So that's an affinity, which is kind of which comes automatically with a particular type of job. If you're a data scientist, then you will be good. If you're a good data scientist, you are going to be good at math. So that's something that comes automatically. So these kind of affinities. So you build a whole map, and then you use this map, to figure out what good looks like for future roles. In terms of what are the skills required, what skills, where are the gaps in the skills, and where do candidates need to improve in the future. So you have all this data available that you can use to streamline and automate the workflow
And this
going
creates
forward.
the foundation, which is the job spec.
Yeah,
This is where everything
exactly,
begins.
exactly. Exactly. And once you have this, then, all the other pieces start falling into place. Suddenly, kind of, the recruiters, they know what they're looking for. The hiring managers, they have it in their mind what they're looking for. But once they have it on paper, everything becomes crystal clear. And the whole process runs much smoother from the first point. And then obviously, everything else works better in the process because
So
of
what
that as
happens
well. So
then?
this is
You've
just
got your
one.
job
Yeah.
spec. Your algorithm's gone out. You've created a spec. What happens?
So one of the good things that happens is that because the job spec has been created properly and all the right skills have been identified in the first place, all the applications that you're getting are going to be very relevant from the first because the candidates themselves are looking at the job spec and they can make an informed decision whether they are the right fit. So automatically, by doing just one simple thing, you have drastically improved the flow of applications, from candidates. Number one. Number two, also when you created a good job description, it is it is catered for neurodivergent candidates and all kind of diverse candidates as well, because the research has shown that the way you write a job description also makes a big impact. And so not only you are attracting a good quality of candidates, but you're attracting a diverse quality of candidates as well. And and again, there are many studies that we can go into if we had more time. But uh, once you get a good flow of candidates into the pipeline, this automatically improves the ratios in terms of shortlisting ratio, interview ratio, offer ratio, hiring ratio, and also further performance of these candidates down the line in the organization as well. Because we specifically get a lot of performance data as well from our customers to fine tune the algorithm going forward and see whether ultimately the holy grail of recruitment is that you want to hire people who will be very good performers in your company. I mean, that's the holy grail of recruiting that we need to kind of solve.
Yeah, and historically, to a degree, we've done that by guesswork, and some have worked out, and some haven't, and
Exactly.
we haven't always understood why some of those people have historically worked out. I think the biggest fear that people have whenever we look at this, there's two concerns, or three concerns. I think one is not really understanding the science, and I think as spokesmen for the industry, as people who go out and talk, we sometimes confuse the layman by speaking in very technical terms. That's something I'm very conscious of trying to avoid. But there's also a fear, a barrier of bias comes up, and I think early examples we saw. There's a famous one with Google where the
Yeah.
headlines kind of said, "Oh, this was completely biased." How are we now eliminating bias from that from the what is an algorithmic process, what is a machine-based process, and what advice would you give to talent leaders listening in how they can have confidence in the process?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So uh, as I said before, the human brain is inherently biased. So we have to actively figure out how to measure bias first, number one. Once you are able to measure the level of bias, then you can actively figure out ways and processes to minimize the bias in the process. And once you are able to kind of make the whole thing transparent, then you can develop training and awareness programs to improve the overall process and the hiring process at the organization as well. So it is it is not something that can be done overnight. So when we start engaging with the customers initially, the first objective is the quality of the data, as I rightly said. So once your data quality is at an acceptable level for AI to start working on and analyzing the data, the second step then becomes about measuring, the data and the measuring the bias. So we typically do a funnel analysis on different diversity data points. So the funnel analysis is that you look at your whole candidate journey across the funnel, and you look at the different ratios of the diversity index across the funnel, and you look at your uh, application funnel, then you look at your shortlisting process. With the after the shortlisting, okay, interview process, your offer. So you look at the ratios, and if you see differing ratios in different parts of the funnel, what that means is that there is a bias in the process. and then you need to look at, okay, what is the reason for the bias, and how do you try to mitigate the bias. So that is the identification and the measurement part of the process. So, and then obviously, you have to do a root cause analysis. Sometimes, the bias is kind of, eliminated because of, training and awareness kind of courses. Many times, the bias is because, like, as I said before, maybe, job descriptions need to be improved to kind of attract kind of, more diverse candidates. And, you need to kind of have make other people feel comfortable in applying for organizations as well. So there are different things that need to be done at different stages of the process to help eliminate and or reduce the bias in the process. And at the end of it is typically a 6 month, 6 to 12 month kind of a process that we work with on organizations, and you measure the impact of what each initiative has done, in a weeks, over a period of month, over a period of quarter. And then kind of, it's an ongoing process, and organizations have to keep working on it because there's a bias which is introduced by many factors, as I said, that too many to go through in this call. But each and every factor has to be measured, has to be analyzed, and has to be worked upon by the organization to actively eliminate. But we help in this process.
I understand
with
it.
all
I think the first phase, one of the yeah, well, yeah, I think one of the areas where we fall down massively is not putting enough effort into actually attracting a diverse audience in the beginning. So I
Exactly.
understand
Yeah.
that the broader you can go and search, the more you can make it based on a very fixed criteria of skills as to who you're looking at. The more opportunity, because we have to think and hope that most people are not consciously biased.
Yeah.
Hence the term unconscious bias.
Yeah.
I think it's also quite important because we hear a lot of argument in the ED&I space that it's token hires or it's hiring people for different kind of bias. And I think if you could show consistency in the selection and that it's 100% merit-based pipeline, except that you managed to open the pipeline up, I think that's the way in which we manage to challenge and achieve a lot of things we've been trying to achieve in diversity. So we're coming towards the end. It's been a fascinating conversation hearing about the journey and some of the learning points. To close, talking to TA leaders, what would kind of be your thoughts that you want to lead them with?
Yeah. So there are a few things. So I think most of the TA leaders are embarking on an AI journey right now. So one of the first point I would like to make is that look at companies, who are not just providing, like a off-the-shelf product, AI product. I think look at companies who have experience of working with the data and and figuring out how to make the AI product work in the organization. I think that's very important. And secondly, with the EU legislation coming in, where HR is being considered as a high risk category, especially for AI algorithms. I think it is very important to again, work with products and companies, who are experienced, kind of, in working with EU customers and looking at the implications of what this legislation brings. So I think 1st of August was the deadline when this has now started coming in, and I think it is very important to cater to this particular piece of
First of
legislation,
August is the
especially.
D-Day. 1st of August is the
Yeah,
D-Day for legislation. That's when we actually have to start understanding legislation. We've got someone
exactly. Yeah,
in a later episode who's going to talk specifically about legislation for 30 minutes and break that down. But really, so your recommendation is look at the history of the companies, the vendors that you're dealing with, and it's not new. This is that they've got some battle scars and know
Yeah,
what they're talking
absolutely.
about. And obviously, this is Recruitment Smart podcast, so you can find the company on any of the links. But where can people get hold of you or reach out if they want to ask you anything?
You can always reach out to me via email at yusuf at recruitmentsmart.com. So yeah, I'm always available on email as well as on LinkedIn as well. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So, Yusuf, thank you for joining us today. Uh, we, I, I look forward to continuing the conversation, to hearing more about the success of Recruitment Smart as we progress. And thanks for hosting this podcast series, which I know is proving useful for talent acquisition leaders. So, thank you, Yusuf.
Thank you very much, Bill. It was a real pleasure talking to you as always. And yeah, look forward to further interactions with you. Thank you.
Thanks all.